everyone! Do you know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk? It's about a young boy who traded his family's cow for a handful of magic beans, only to find a giant beanstalk that reached up into the clouds the next morning. Well, today we're going back 5,000 years to uncover it. When Jack climbed up the beanstalk, he found a land inhabited by giants, and after stealing some of their treasure, he managed to escape with his life. But do you know the real story behind Jack and the Beanstalk? In fact, there are hundreds of versions of the story from cultures all over the world, each with its own unique details and characters. He isn't stealing from the gods, but bringing offerings of food and flowers to them. And when the gods send a flood to punish humanity, he uses his ladder to save two animals, a lion and a monkey. When he finally comes down the ladder, he gives the animals to some poor people, and they all live happily ever after. You might not believe this, but the earliest known version of the story of Jack and the Beanstalk was written down on a clay tablet in ancient Mesopotamia around 2000 BC. It tells the story of a poor man who has only one cow, but he sacrifices it to the gods and receives some magical beans in return. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Why have countless cultures across the world told stories about a boy who climbs a giant beanstalk and enters the land of the gods? Well, the story may have been popular because it gave people hope in hard times. And what other stories would you like us to cover in the future? Please let me know in the comments below. In many versions of the story, the main character is poor, but he still manages to get what he wants in the end. Thanks to your support, we're able to make this show for everyone for free. And if you'd like to support us, you can go to our support page to learn more. Or perhaps the story was popular because it gave people a warning. In many versions, the main character has to sacrifice something in order to get what he wants. And if he doesn't sacrifice what's asked of him, he pays a heavy price. But while they were gone, the gods became very angry and sent a great flood to wash away the traces of humanity from the earth. Only the boy survived by sheltering inside the beanstalk, and he escaped punishment by sacrificing one of the musician's wives. He repeated this several times until all the musicians had been sacrificed, and then the gods allowed him to come down from the beanstalk and live out the rest of his days as a human. The next day, those beans grew into a giant beanstalk that reached up into the heavens. But when the gods discover he's stolen their plants, they send a giant bird to kill him. And just as the bird is about to eat him, the boy throws some of the magical plants at it. They take root, and the bird dies. He escapes in a basket made out of the plants and floats down a river until he is rescued by some fishermen. The boy becomes friends with the fishermen and lives with them for a time, but eventually sets off to see the world. He meets a king who challenges him to a wrestling match and defeats him. Much to the delight of the king's daughter, who had been watching the match, the boy refuses the king's offer of gold and instead asks for a sack of flour, which the king gives him. On his way home, the boy comes across an old woman who begs him to let her carry the sack of flour for him, but he refuses. She then puts a curse on him so that every time he looks at water, he'll see a beautiful woman begging him to marry her. When he reaches his destination, he tells the fishermen what has happened, and they help him break the curse by throwing the flour at the old woman. Once the curse is broken, he spends the rest of his days fishing with his new friends. And just like in the more modern telling of the story, the poor man's son climbed up the beanstalk and entered the land of the gods. There he met a group of musicians and invited them to come down from the heavens and play music in the city of Ash. In another version of the tale from ancient Mesopotamia, the boy climbs the beanstalk and enters the land of the gods, where he steals some magical plants. These ancient Mesopotamian stories are the oldest known versions of the Jack and the Beanstalk tale. But the story was also popular in ancient Greece, India, and China. For example, in the African-American the boy who climbed up the heavenly ladder. The boy who climbs the beanstalk isn't a greedy thief, but a curious adventurer. So why is the story of Jack and the Beanstalk so popular? Whatever the reason, the story of Jack and the Beanstalk continues to capture our imaginations more than 5,000 years later. Now I'd like to hear from you. What did you think of this episode? What did you find most interesting? I also want to take a moment to say thank you to our supporters. That's it for this episode.